Hey, beautiful people, and welcome to the very first episode of my new podcast, An Unseen Conversation. I am your host, Shania Natee, and I am super duper excited. Okay, super excited to be speaking with you guys and to let you guys know what my new podcast is going to be about. Firstly, I have a list of questions that I'm going to run through. So this episode one, is just going to be an introductory episode, and then we'll move on from there. So who am I? Who is Shania Natee? I am a wife. I'm a mom. I'm a business owner. Um, I help my husband run a landscaping company. I am a godmother. I used to be a teacher. Okay, a daycare teacher. I am a child of God. I have had a relationship with the Lord since I was super young. I've been in ministry, ushering, all of that. Um, let's see what else. I have two daughters. And what makes me qualified to do a podcast? Nothing, actually. I'm just a regular smuggler woman who loves the Lord, loves to cook, loves to bake. But I do have a story to tell. I have testimonies to tell. And there are things that we need to talk about as women who know the Lord, so that we are able to have these discussions, right? That we usually don't have, whether that be in the church or just amongst um, ourselves. Second question: what led you to start an unseen conversation? An unseen conversation is a podcast idea that the Lord dropped in my spirit when I was pregnant with my last daughter. She's now 3.5 months. So it was a few months ago. And I wanted this podcast to be about women who love the Lord, who are trying to figure out who they are. They are trying to figure out through the different transitions of life, from being a single woman to an engaged woman to a married woman to an employee to an entrepreneur to a self-employed, right? From being a married woman with no kids to a married woman with kids, whether that's a working mom or a stay-at-home mom, and so on and so forth. Even women who do not have children, and even women who are divorced, thinking about divorced, being divorced, or people who are separated, women who are separated from their husbands right now, and across all walks of life, but specifically finding who we are aside from these things. Who are you aside from being a mom? Who are you aside from being a business owner? Who are you besides being a wife? Who are you besides doing things in your church, doing things in ministry? Because a lot of times as women, we like to define or describe ourselves by the things that we do or the things that we have. But who are you really? Who, and not only just wanting to have discussions about who we are as women, but are we the women that God has created us to be? Because when we are the women, or when we're actively pursuing God so that He can sculpt us into the woman that He has actually created us to be, then we can be better wives, better mothers, better sisters, better godmothers, better, employees, better employers, you know what I mean? And so that's why I wanted to start this podcast, because these are conversations that we need to have. And not only that, but we are going to talk about postpartum, pregnancy. I'm talking the whole 9 yards, right? And not only do I want to talk about these things, but the reason being is because when I was pregnant with our first daughter, I didn't have nobody to turn to. I had a couple people, which was, which was nice, and that I'm thankful for, right? But I mean, as especially in the body of Christ, no one talked about postpartum. No one talked about the demonic attacks that happen after you have a child. No one talks about the vulnerability. No one talks about the emotional toll, the worry, the anxiousness, all of these things that are not of the Lord, right? And I was talking to my husband and I'm like, if I had have known that it was like this, because when we go to church, we talk about everything else, right? Or at least we should talk about everything else. Okay. And I'm like, we talk about everything else, but no one has talked about the demonic oppression. That's what I say. The demonic oppression that happens to women, or me specifically, because I'm gonna be straight up and specific, because this is why I'm starting the podcast, so we can talk about this. This is real, honest, transparent. And if you know me outside of like social media and stuff, I'm gonna keep it real 100% all the time. No, there's no sugarcoating or nothing. You ask me something, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be transparent, blah blah blah, right? And so that's why I want this podcast to be about, because these are things that we need to talk about that we do not talk about. And I told my husband and I said, no one talks about the demonic attacks, the the things you hear, the suicidal thoughts, the mind games, the torment, the anxiety, the worry, all throughout, postpartum, whether that be right after or a couple months after, you know what I mean? And it bugged me that I did not have that spiritual support after I had my child. Of course, I had spiritual support, from my husband, but like my aunts and stuff like that. But I'm talking like as far as like a community of women. You know what I mean? Like why doesn't that exist? And so when I told my husband this, he was like, well, it doesn't exist because the Lord wants you to do it. Okay. And that's the thing about when you marry a man of God who the Lord talks to, he'll tell you, yeah, you already know you're supposed to be doing that, which is why we're even having this conversation, right? And so that's what this is going to be. An unseen conversation. I came up with this name because I wanted the name to be different. I wanted it to be attention grabbing, right? And I wanted it to relate to the things that we were going to be talking about. And I wanted it to relate to my own personal journey as, a wife, a mom, and a woman trying to find out who I am outside of these things now that I am a wife, now that I am a mother of two girls, right? And I was having Bible study by myself, and I was reading Genesis, and I came across the story of Hagar, which is Genesis 16. And so what happened was Abraham and Sarah, they're trying to have a baby. Sarah, like, I'm too old, you know what I'm saying? So she told her slave, Hagar, to go, do with her husband, right? So she ends up, Hagar ends up pregnant. And Sarah got an attitude, which I don't know why she had an attitude. What did she think was going to happen? But whatever. That's neither here nor there. And so Sarah had an attitude, and Hagar's feelings was hurt, and she ran away. She left. And so I'm going to read what the verse says. And this is Genesis 16. And Genesis 16 and 7. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, this is before God changed her name to Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress Sarai, she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, you are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. That is Genesis 16, 7 through 14. And the key verse here, I wanted to read all of it for context, but the key verse here is Genesis 16 and 13 through 14, which is she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. And I read that after I had my second daughter, and I felt unseen. I felt, when you are a woman, especially when you're a mom, the mental load and just the everyday things, the everyday things that we have to to remember to do, we forget, and just just especially being a stay-at-home mom, because I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my husband works outside of the house, and so I'm here with the girls 24/7, right? And so just in my mind, I'm like, dang, nobody sees me. Nobody sees, me up at 1, 2, 3 a.m. feeding the baby. Nobody sees this. Nobody sees that. And when you guys listen to what I'm saying, you guys are going to know what I'm talking about, because as a woman, these are things that we think, right? No one sees the sacrifices that we make. No one sees, the late nights, the early mornings, X, Y, and Z. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, nobody sees me. I'm like hidden away, right? And so I read this scripture, and when she said she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her, you are the God who sees me, I just started crying, because it's like no one sees me, but God sees me. No one sees the sleepless nights. No one sees the early mornings. No one sees, the pacing the floor in the middle of the night, praying, warfaring for, X, Y, and Z, interceding on behalf of people, or, up when you're cooking, when you're baking, when you're making the cooking list, when you're making a grocery list, when you're, paying the bills, when you're budgeting this or budgeting that, and taking the kids to school, and, doing bookkeeping for your business, and you know what I mean, doing all of these things. And as women, we want to be acknowledged, and sometimes we don't get acknowledged, but God acknowledges us. God sees us. And that's why I named this podcast An Unseen Conversation, because we feel unseen, right? But we are not unseen because God sees us. And I just absolutely adore that verse, and it really touched my spirit when I read that. Okay. Um Next question is, what kind of topics will I be discussing? I already talked about that. We'll be talking about a lot. And I also want to add, if you want to talk about something specific, you can email me. I'll put the links and all of that at the end of the video, when where I share everything on my pages and all that stuff. And so you can DM me on Instagram or whatever, different things you want to talk about. Also, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, you can email me or DM me on Instagram. Like I said, all the links will be in the like in my bio and on my pages and everything like that. If you want to do promo, same thing, right? And so this podcast is for women, whether you're married or not, whether you're single, divorced, widowed, all across the board, young, older, middle aged, um, everyone. And what I want us to get out of these episodes, after each episode, is tidbits of encouragement, not only biblical encouragement, because we're going to be reading scriptures out the Bible, and having these conversations, having these honest conversations, because these are things that, we don't talk about. These topics are things we don't talk about. And so these are conversations that we need to have. It's healthy to have conversations. And if you know me outside of social media, if you know me in real life, I love to talk. Okay. So this is like the perfect thing. I love to talk, and I love to have deep, heavy, quote unquote, conversations, or conversations that usually people don't, like to have. But these are things we need to talk about, so we can be free from certain things, because a lot of times us as women, we are bound because of the things that we do not talk about. Okay. And let's see, I have some more questions on here. Yep. So, I'm going to be uploading these on all my social media platforms. And like I said, if you want to be a guest, if you want to do promo, like if you sell t-shirts and you want me to wear a t-shirt during my podcast, if you sell candles and you want me to shout out your candles, shout out your business, shout out your ministry, X, Y, and Z, email me if you want to be a guest. Email me if you have topics and you want me to talk about them. You can email me if you want to remain anonymous. Put anonymous in the email. If you want me to, say X, Y, and Z, such and such, ask this question and then we could talk about it. We're gonna be doing that. I'm gonna be doing newsletters. Um, and so this podcast is going to be underneath my business, which is Road to Royalty. And I've been MIA for Road to Royalty for actually maybe a few years now. But I'm back and I'm better. And I got some big things up my sleeve. The Lord has really been, no, I'm not going to say that. I have been obedient because the Lord is speaking as long as you are listening. Okay. And so I'm tired of running away from the call that God has put on your life is exhausting. It's physically exhausting. It's spiritually exhausting, emotionally, psychologically. It's exhausting. Don't do it. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. If God called you to do something, do it. Just do it. That's my thing. Even recording this episode, it was like things just kept happening to where I couldn't do it. But God shows up for me. God sees me. I have to show up for him because these things we need to talk about, right? And if I had a space or a community of women like this when I had my first daughter or after I had my first daughter, I would have been a lot better spiritually and mentally because of the things that were going on, which we will talk about. I'm gonna do like a couple of episodes about postpartum, and the whole village and all that stuff. And so, yeah, you can support by liking, sharing, commenting, emailing me. Yep. And so I am super, 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 super duper excited. I'm so excited. The episodes will be bi-weekly for right now. Probably every Sunday. And yeah. So I'm super excited, and make sure you like and share and comment. And I'll see you next time.